Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Wayne County Chambers podcast, For the Record. We want to say a special thank you to our sponsors, Sport Durst of Goldsboro, Goldsboro Builders Supply, and Professional Data Management. The Sport Durst team is ready to get you into a beautiful new Volkswagen, offering open and honest pricing on every vehicle and service. Sport Durst of Goldsboro understands the value of your time and dollars. Providing quality building materials since 1953, Goldsboro Builders Supply is your premier destination for custom designs and excellent service to builders and contractors in Wayne County and surrounding areas. Professional Data Management offers specialized service and technologies designed to help you gain maximum reimbursements for the valuable services that your office provides. Another huge thank you to our in-kind sponsors, Daniels Furniture, University Lights of Goldsboro, and Johnson Carpet One, who together worked hard to make our beautiful podcast set what you see today. And for the record, we're glad you're here.
All right. Well, here we are with the Teels. Famous. I mean, world famous.
Yeah.
Tell us who you are. Let's start there. Names. Where'd you come from? Just some little personal intel.
Sure. Well, I'm here with my beautiful bride of a couple of years, Luke Teel. Meg and I, Meg here, are both from Newburyport, Massachusetts, born and raised. I'd say the first in both of our families to reach escape velocity from small town in Newburyport, Mass, just north of Boston, right on the seacoast. All of our families, as we've said a couple of times, we can go all the way back to great-grandparents on both sides of our family are all from the same hometown. And we have not gone past the great-grandparents because you never know when those family trees could cross at some point. But we're originally, born and raised together, if you will, a year apart. We graduated a year apart from high school. I kind of always had a thing, knowing I want to fly jets and serve, and Air Force Academy was something I learned about early on, and it worked out. I worked hard and it worked out. And Meg and I we had different roots, and I'll let her obviously talk about her side too. But we, at the end of the Air Force Academy, we kind of had a chance encounter and a rejoin, and that worked out really well for me. And I went back to Boston after the academy for a couple of years for grad school. We hit it off, and we got married between my 2 years in Boston, and lived in South Boston for our first year. And then we've been off to the races ever since. And I don't know how deep into it you want to go, but I'll turn it over to you. A little bit of our story.
Sure. What Luke isn't telling you is we actually met in kindergarten.
Oh.
And we were friends throughout childhood. We were from a small city, like he said, in Massachusetts. But he likes to say I failed the sandbox because I graduated
You said it, not me.
a year behind him in school because Massachusetts at the time had a readiness year, and I was incredibly shy. So he moved on to first grade, and I did the in-between kindergarten, first grade year, which did wonders for my personality, as you can see.
Yeah.
But
you jumped him.
Big time. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But a question I get a lot, and I think probably a lot of military spouses, Air Force spouses get, is did you know what you were getting into when you married your spouse? Now, I was 21 when I got engaged. My Air Force life at that time consisted of living in Southie, which is a part of Boston, a lot of Irish Catholics, so I felt right at home, and Luke was in graduate school. So no, I absolutely did not know what I was getting into when we made it official. But it's been unbelievable, incredible journey. But yeah, we're 22 years strong now. Wow. And we actually, the anniversary of our engagement was yesterday.
I knew that.
That's so good. I want to hear this story.
Oh, no.
How did this happen?
So like I said, he was a year ahead of me in school.
Okay.
So we did about 4 or 5 months long distance while he was in Boston and I was in school in Washington, D.C. And he came to pick me up from school for the holiday break. and drove my parents' minivan down to pick me up. And we did a stopover in New York City. And he had it all planned. But like all great plans, as we know, there were a few kinks in the plan because I was totally clueless. So he had everything time scheduled. And
military precision.
Yeah. Very.
And it took us a little bit longer to make that trip to New York City. So he had to go to plan B and I think plan C to make that happen. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget, we were in a carriage ride in Central Park and he had the ring and he started to get on one knee. And in true, Air Force fashion, he said, "It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be great." And so true to that, 22 years later, it's not been easy, but it's been great.
Central
Get
Park.
me all choked up here.
Yeah.
First time I was right for a while. Like that was, I think we were spot on with that.
Yes.
But it's been a ride.
Wow.
Yes.
And 4 kids.
We have 4 girls. Yeah. So
Four
maybe
girls.
continuing the story and what brought us here, I guess. Went to, so I got what I wanted to do and like small delay in grad school, went to pilot training and we lived our first real assignment in Texas in a pilot training, UPT, undergraduate pilot training at Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas. And we already had some friends that we already knew I knew from the academy and we had actually known in our wedding in the same class with us. And man, what an awesome introduction to the Air Force family. The Air Force does a good job, the military does a good job of putting people in stressful environments, the pressure cooker, if you will. And we got to do it with a lot of young families, newly married couples. And so that shared bond of a high stress environment, but having close friendships, it just brings people together close. And we're continuing to be close to this very day with a lot of people we went through. And it was a great introduction with some even leaders that we had in pilot training, commanders and mentors and others, and outside of pilot training, thinking, navigators and others that were really just showed us what it was to have a real family in the Air Force. It's not just a job. It really became, it's like a lifestyle, right? And from there, got the F-15E first choice of an assignment, which was fantastic, and came out here and stayed here for a while. So came to Seymour Johnson, went through what we call the B course, the FTU, where you learn you got your wings, but you don't know what to do with them. You can't do much with them, and then they put you through and make you a full up air crew mission member, and stayed here for a first assignment, which was extended for a while. Actually, at the time, people weren't getting what we call ops to other assignments, and I got to extend, which I was really fortunate with, combat deployment and other things, and went to weapons school out of there. And then while we were here, we had the first 2 of our 4 girls, Maggie and Kelty, and then went off to weapons school. I went to weapons school for a bit, and then we went off to England for a couple of years. We had our little Brit, Quinn, who was a third of our 4 girls there. And then off to, after a couple of years there, more combat deployments, all those things. We went, did some staff work in school in the DC area, up in the Pentagon, and then Quantico, Virginia with the Marines. And then was fortunate enough to get called back, to come back and do a leadership tour with both the director of operations and commander of a fighter squadron here at Seymour Johnson, our second assignment, where we had girl number 4 here. So 3 of our 4 girls were born here in Goldsboro. From there, back to DC and more school and staff, and then out to Idaho as a deputy commander of the fighter wing out there, 366 fighter wing. And then back here where we've been for the last, I don't know how long, but approaching 2 years. And so, to tie it back to the local community here, who actually, we want to talk about, this is our home away from home. So we're both from the same hometown.
And
but
so
if there's any one place,
and is that what you call home? Like, I guess Boston would, or
it's Newburyport, small town
that's
Newburyport.
right.
But
35 miles north of Boston, but
that's really home. That's
Right.
home. And then,
Yep.
because I don't know how you define home
Yeah.
in the Air Force and in a position like you all's
right.
is interesting.
Right.
How do you define home? How have you worked that out in your?
Well, it's funny. There's a little sign that a lot of people carry with them in the Air Force homes that says home is where the Air Force sends you, because you need to make home wherever that is. For us, we've been fortunate enough, and I mean, all told, it'll be about 10 years we've got to be here, not consecutively, of course, but throughout our adult life. So the most we've ever called home is this place here. So for us, Goldsboro is home. But it's funny. I'm going to fill in the blanks of what he's not telling you.
Okay, hit me.
And
Not supposed to be this honest, you know?
so my Air Force experience when he was in grad school was just so tepid, low, because we were just newly married, newlyweds in the city. I had come from the city as a college student, so I was a city girl. And we took the long road to Texas. And I don't think I have to say much more. I mean, talk about shock and awe when we pulled into Wichita Falls, Texas, and for his pilot training course. I cried like a baby rolling into there because I was thinking, where have you taken me? And I was ready to get back in that car and drive on back to Boston. Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, when that course was through, I cried like a baby having to leave, because we had built that home with our people, you know? And I think a lot of Air Force families, spouses will relate to that, where you just dive in, create community, bond with people so fast, they become like family, and you cry when you leave a place. And sometimes these places aren't great. So it's like the people are what make it so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny, and no disrespect to any other, branch or service, but the experience that I've had with the Air Force and leaders in the Air Force, there's something different. There's a different quality around character and family and I don't know, education. I'm not sure how to put a finger on it. Bryce Silver was one of my first introductions to
amazing human.
To an Air Force leader, yep. And you know him well. You know him better than I know him. I mean, that a family like that, and you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, these people are. It's like the best of all of it. Like, they clearly high capacity people, mm-hmm. right? All you guys, very high capacity leaders, high capacity families, but there's not an arrogance about it. I don't know. It's just a different quality. Explain that to me.
Well, present company excluded, I'd say there are amazing humans, people. I say, officer, enlisted, civilian, just amazing people we work with every day, and I couldn't agree more. There's something to it. It's a culture. And if anything we talk about in our wing, when I'm talking about building leaders, and I won't go into all of our priorities, but anything, it is culture. And it starts with just some great individuals, all of whom have their own stories. Different people join the Air Forces for different reasons. And, I said this, and I heard this. It's not an original thought, but from other senior leaders before me. But people join for some things. I joined because I thought flying jets was cool. And I had a sense of patriotism, and I thought serving my country would be cool too. And flying jets still, by the way, is cool. Yeah. I like it. It's a lot of work cool. And all that too. But I stay in because of the people, because of the amazing individuals you get to work with every day. And I'm still blown away by people and their families, and how it is a family thing, and it's a different age, and we have different challenges and all that.
Sure.
But that there's something right there, and I wouldn't say it's just the Air Force. I went to school with Marines. I think I mentioned before we started here, and great friends actually from every service, Navy, Army. So we have friends from our experiences across the board. And I wouldn't say maybe you're exposed to the Air Force, but I agree. I think there's amazing people I've met. And that's just been the coolest part. And that's what keeps us in, is just the people part.
And the resilience of the families. And I think it's probably comes from what you just mentioned, having to go to these unfamiliar places and having to just figure it out, every new place, every new town, every new stop. And, but it's obvious. I mean, it's something that's identifiable, and unique, I think. And it's a good, I see it as a very positive thing, not just for the country, but for the communities everywhere you go. I mean,
yeah,
it's very beneficial.
Hey, let me put, yes. I'll also say it's also, we're all human, and it's not always easy.
Sure.
You know, it's, we're all very human, and it's not always, you know, and, relationships are strained, you know, people are strained, you know, and so, you know, one thing, again, non-original thought, but I've heard people say, you know, when at some point, either you'll be done with the Air Force or the Air Force will be done with you. Make sure that the people that you're with are next to you when you leave, and you know, like anything, the moves, the deployments, TDYs, it can be a strain on people too. But that is something that, you know, we talk about and emphasize a lot. You know, when you talk about families and supporting airmen and families, a explicit priority in the wing, trying to build that culture in, making sure that we're all balancing at every level too, because, you know, it's we're all human, and while it might seem like, yeah, we can make community everywhere we go, and we often make it happen. It's hard work.
Well, culture trumps everything, they say.
Yep.
And it makes that uniform, I think, mean something. And I think you feel it everywhere you go, you know, and run into you all. So I think it's successful. Even if it's not perfect, it's successful. So that's a good thing. So Goldsboro, you talked about, you know, it's been a meaningful place for you. What's been some highlights, your favorite parts?
Well, sorry, I'll start first, and I might even step on your toes a little bit here. Same answer. It's the people, right? I mean, it's while the city and the town and the county, having been here a few times and, you know, approaching 20 years, frankly, have seen a lot of changes for the good. You know, the downtown, the Berkeley, and all of the things. It's just the people, like anything. You know, we've got friends from our first assignment that we were here, neighbors from our first assignment, some of whom we work very closely with right now, you know, in my current job, that we've known for years. And they're just good people. It is such a great and supportive community. You know, people we've gone to church with, continue to go to church with, we've known for years. You know, pastors baptize our children, and so on and so forth. And that's it. It's just such an awesome and welcoming community, even by the line of questioning. You know, just people appreciate, you know, airmen. They can empathize. We talk about quick bonds and forging those bonds fast, because, you know, you sometimes have a limited time together. Very rarely have we ever met folks that are standoffish and don't want to. And we have in other places. It's some people are like, you seem good, but I don't want to say goodbye to you in a year. Right. That hasn't been the case here, and just a welcoming community in every sense.
Cool.
Totally, yeah. I mean, hands down, the most welcoming military community that we've known. We're obviously biased because we've spent so much time here, but we are grateful for that, and we consider ourselves blessed to be able to call friends here that are permanent here for 20 years friends. I mean, that's almost unheard of for an Air Force family to be able to say, wow, we've known them so long, because typically you're only at a place a couple years, 2 or 3 years, and then move on. But for us, it's been just this journey that keeps bringing us back here. And for whatever reason, it's only and kind of enhanced our experience, our Air Force experience, to have that continuity for our kids too. I mean, they love hearing about where we bought our first house and where we brought them home from the hospital, and the fact that we have been able to see them in this community several times as they've grown up has been wonderful. To think there's people here in Goldsboro that knew us in our early 20s, saw as our kids have grown, and now, you know, our oldest is 17. It's just, we are just so grateful. It's a blessing.
Sport Durst Volkswagen Mazda of Goldsboro is proud to support Wayne County Chamber of Commerce. Family owned and operated, Sport Durst knows the importance of keeping local money local and supporting the community. We put our customers first with the area's best pricing, best trade-in value, and best selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. Come experience the Sport Durst difference, where customers and community come first.
Yeah. So long run, long ride, I'm sure. But how does one become a colonel?
Well, you got to be in a while to start with. And yeah, there's a lot of different paths to be a colonel. You know, it's one of the more senior ranks. But like anything, you start at the ground level. And
what is ground level? I mean, I guess if you're an officer, doesn't it starts after college? And do you start at lieutenant, or how does that work?
Yep, that's right. So formally, as far as the grade structure, as we call it, once you become an officer, and there's different ways to become an officer. I went to the Air Force Academy, which I did not to make it about me, but I didn't come from a very a deep military experience family. You know, I didn't have a dad and so on and so forth. I just heard, well, you want to fly jets? You know, that's a way to go, and that was the way I kind of pursued. But you can go to college, ROTC. You can go to college. You have to have a degree. That is a prerequisite among some others. You can go to what's called OTS, Officer Training School, and you can be enlisted and then go through, get your degree, and become a OTS. And there's other different routes for like medical officers, direct, whatever. But the standard flow is you get in the ground level, which is as a second lieutenant, the 01, as you call it. And for me, actually, I was, as was mentioned, I kind of did that time in a unique thing, being able to go to grad school for a couple of years, which was really interesting, eye-opening, aperture expanding pretty early on, non-standard. And then on, we call it pipeline in the rated career field, or in the called pilot aircrew career field. So, but every career field's a little different, but you'll have your own sort of path within that career field that will include functional expertise, getting good at doing something, and leading, at the shop level and doing other things. And then you get flight command and more leadership as you move up. And like a lot of things, it's kind of up and out. I think like a lot of us, I didn't come in to the Air Force ever thinking, man, I just want to be a colonel. No, I came in, as I said, I want to fly jets and serve, and like I said before, the reason you stay in is sometimes a little different than the reason you come in, and I really love the leadership part of command in particular, but you lead at all different levels, and like anything, at a certain point, it's a pyramid. There's just sometimes you look around and there's fewer of your peers around than you, and you end up in those higher echelon ranks. But you do that by, you move up typically by doing okay at certain levels, and there's on-ramps and there's off-ramps too. And a lot of it is personal choice. I know a lot of equally or much more capable officers than me that for personal or family reasons and the balance of life and all that, they find an off-ramp earlier. And we just found it still works for us. Like I said, it's not always easy. And we enjoy what we're doing. We're having fun, and so we're still in.
Well, and we made jokes about you being old, but the truth is, to be at the level you are, you seem young to me. I mean, you guys seem like you're in the thick of it, like in the middle of your prime, and so it seems like. I mean, with that said, that there's a future for growth. Even is that something that you feel, or is that do you have is that?
Oh, no, well, we've had a lot of conversations of what's next, and I'll let Meg can talk to that too. We really are, and I think I give this advice to a lot of people: have an eye on what could be, but really take everything one step at a time.
Sure.
Because life can hit you in the face, as it has for us personally, and professionally in other ways. Life's going to hit you at some point. Yeah. But one step at a time. We'll see what's next. We're enjoying it right now. We're looking at what what the immediate future could be, and maybe some deployments and other things in the future. And then a lot of it kind of comes to how's the family? again, I can't go without her and the whole family by my side. You know, you get those out of whack and it just doesn't work out. So
right.
We'll see, but enjoying it right now.
How do you feel about all that?
It's funny. Probably in recent years, we've had more of that conversation since, a lot of our age group or peers have taken that off ramp and are doing other things. So we've had the conversation for sure. But Luke's always said, and I tend to agree, considering family first, we always try to. But if we're still enjoying what we're doing, there are just way too many positives for our family to step away from that. And we've kind of thought until someone's saying, get out of here, time to go, we'll serve and do our best as long as we can. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Because I think a lot of folks at those points in their career outside of military face similar, not the same. It's a different structure and a different track, but I think around this season of life, it's a little bit like, which way do we go here? I can either stay here and then I'm a lifer, or if I exit, am I having to reinvent myself? I don't know. It's like that. I think that there are many families that have to navigate that career, high achieving careers, and working through what next steps are when you start getting into rarer air, right? Because the steps become a little bit more elite, and elite sounds cool to, the world and maybe even to you personally, but then you have to measure it against so many other contextual demands.
Yep. No, I mean, Scott, you're bringing up conversations. I feel like, we talk about, we talk about us, of course, but I talk about with officers every day. Cause amongst peers, we always say we are at that time of life where, kids are getting older, parents are aging, and what could it be on the outside? And part of that is, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up yet. That's part of my, my calculus personally, our calculus, but you're right. And actually add in, this is actually something, we talk a lot about, but is different today when we talk about today's Air Force in a good way, but also with challenges, is we have people actually heterogeneous, different family dynamics, a lot more spouses that are professionals, a lot more spouses that do equally amazing work. And now how do you balance two careers and kids and, moves and, schools and all of the things? And that's a challenge. It's absolutely a challenge. And it's how do we retain talent? And I think you give a value proposition. You show that, give them something that's meaningful, that they feel like they can move the ball forward and be valued for what they do, and they're doing valuable things, and they can bring their family along with them as much as they can. Nothing's ever perfect. That's, but you're right. What you're describing is a conversation I have every day.
Well, and on the spousal employment side, I think about this a lot. The challenge, the tension, I guess, is employers may not always be receptive to what they perceive to be short-term employees. Is that fair? Is that the biggest challenge, or what do you see as the biggest challenge to a spouse being able to have whatever optimum career they want at any given time? What are the obstacles as you see it?
Sure. Yes, the answer is yes. It's a challenge. I mean, no Air Force spouse, military spouse is going to sit there and say their career ambitions have been a straight path. There's usually bumps in the road, hurdles to go over. You're talking to a teacher and a school counselor, so state licensure and moving as much as we do is a huge hurdle. One, in recent years, they've really tried to improve for spouses. But I think.
Explain that issue right quick if you don't mind, because
Sure.
there'll be people who are listening to this who don't understand
What that
issue.
means.
So what does it mean when you say?
So, being of a profession that requires a license and at the state level for a military spouse who may only live in a state 2, maybe 3 years at a time, it makes being able to pursue that career somewhat challenging because you're needing to get license in whatever state you teach, practice. So you can think of any number of jobs where you would need a state license to actually work. In recent years, at the federal level even, they've tried to help military spouses knowing that this was such a huge hurdle. And quite frankly, that's such a hurdle in families that we talked about families, taking the off-ramp away from the Air Force, away from military life. It is because to give spouses more stability in employment and career. So, at least when we talk to our friends, that seems to be one of the reasons to take the exit ramp. But for me personally, I happen to choose careers where, that's how I'm able to work is with state licensure. So I've had several challenging assignments for sure to be able to work. It's not easy at all. And I think we keep saying that, I think over and over again today. But the truth is people are aware of some of these hurdles and are trying to make them better. I'm thinking of my school counseling. There are certain states that it's easily transferable. Mm-hmm. So I'm able to work in certain states a lot easier. We love that across the board. And I think that's what they're moving towards. But we talked about spouse employment, which is huge. And like you said, the Air Force wasn't what the Air Force was even 20 years ago, where you may have had more spouses at home or not working full time or whatever it may be. So I do believe we're headed in that direction with the understanding that, hey, essentially this is a transient lifestyle. And to make it more acceptable for families to stay in, we need to improve our laws to help those families. So,
if I may just hit on that too, because as you know, Scott, you've been to a lot of events and discussions with me, and this is one of the things I and we in our 4th Fighter Wing, the leadership, Seymour Johnson leadership has been going after, because this is a readiness issue. Retention is a readiness issue. Huge. And people, we recruit airmen, but we retain families, usually around the dinner table. And I can think of we can think of many people who have had challenges that transferring licenses over. And what the way it works now is, in today's environment, today's economy, what's good for our military families in general, and there's other things, quality of life we can talk to, more, is good for the community. We're talking about bringing teachers in, dentists in, social workers, occupational therapists. These are names and faces I can think of off the top of my head right now that the community can use, but they really need to be licensed and know that they have that transferability of their license coming in, because they don't want to wait 6 months to a year to get a job. And so one thing we've been working with the state a lot on, and state leadership and North Carolina MAC and the NCCC, North Carolina Commanders Council, et cetera. And we're getting progress with this, is really highlighting that. There is federal legislation, the Civil Service Members Relief Act, which directs states to be able to say you must use another state's, for most, not all, most licenses, you must use and honor other states' licenses for most occupations, but assuming that they're in good standing and things of that sort. But it still requires the state bureaucracy, which is not singularized. It's like every bureaucracy. They're still very stovepiped to make it easy for service members' spouses to be able to call up and say, hey, I'm a service member spouse, and have the process give them priority to actually process their paperwork and get them so that they can have that worked out, and they can get a job when they show up, and they don't have to do it 3, 6 months, 9 months, or a year into an assignment. And that is a retention tool. And likewise, that can be an off-ramp. And I've seen both. Anyway.
No, I hear you. And I know that a lot of work has been done on that, and I'm sure a lot of work will continue to be done. But I think it's important for people to realize that challenge.
It's hard.
And that these challenges, that it's not just to do this nice thing for spouses. Hey, we ought to figure out ways to, clear the brush, to, clear the runway, to make it as easy as possible. People need to understand it as a threat to the mission. It is a threat to what you do, because it's a threat to your families. And anything that is an obstacle to your families becomes an obstacle to your jobs, becomes an obstacle to the mission. And I just, I think that when people in the community start to hear it in those ways, they start to hear it a little differently, because they don't think it's like childcare. We talk about childcare all the time. And people, when they think about childcare, they think about it like a social issue. And I'm like, no, it's an economic threat. And in Wayne County and at Seymour Johnson, it's a threat to the mission.
It's a readiness threat. It's both.
Come on, so anyway, I thank you for sharing that, because I think it, and clarifying kind of that, the problem specifically, even in your own experience. As we think about, I guess there are the local challenges, which are things like spousal employment, but so maybe answer this in the micro sense, but also in the macro sense. The world is crazy right now. I mean, like never in my lifetime. I was born in 1980. So, is that
a minute or two ago?
That's right. I
might have a little bit of time on you, but not
I'm a little bit older,
Yeah.
I've never experienced this. I've never experienced what I feel like I'm experiencing right now, both in terms of the country itself, our own country internally, and certainly externally. Forever there was no question in my life about where we stood, in the order of things. And while that's still likely true, there's a lot less fear, it seems, in challenging. Anyway, I don't want to answer it for you. It just seems like there's a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of what feels like disorder, what feels like animosity and division. And what do you see? Like, what worries you? What concerns you?
Well, yeah, you're right. I get maybe a micro answer and a macro, but I couldn't agree more on the macro sense. What well, again, I think you probably heard me say this before, maybe why you teed up the question, but I think, and I've said to airmen, and I've heard it said too, that we're in the most dangerous times in my career. If you look at just the strategic forces and the challenges that we're seeing as a country, Pacific, the country is in our national security strategy, defense strategy is focusing on China, Russia, of course, truly challenging the world order that has been set since World War II in new ways. And you add in now social media and disinformation and all kinds of things. I still think at the, what makes us strong and as a society, we mentioned actually beforehand, before we started rolling the tapes about, support for the military and things of that sort. But the divisions in society, I think, is one of the biggest challenges I see right now. It's just our ability to get normal things done, both at the government level, and that trickles down all the way, just to social media inspired, fueled. I think that does. I think you look at the fabric of our country, and we talk about, and you were around, if you can remember 9/11 and what, not just how terrible 9/11 was, but how clarifying 9/12 was, and the unity that we had and the sense of purpose and mission. And, we're all on the same page. We're all in the same boat. don't feel that today. So to keep it at the strategic level, I think those are, or the big level, though, that does, worry me certainly.
Can I speak right? Because
Sure.
I might can say a thing that you are. I would encourage. Please don't say anything about this part. Let me say it. Continuing resolutions are a result of years of what seems like partisan divide, where the United States Congress and our administrations, and this is a bipartisan problem that is year after year after year, cannot pass a budget because of this problem that we're talking about right now, which leads to these continuing resolutions to fund the government with the threat, it seems like every year or every other year, that we're going to shut the government down if it doesn't occur. Or there's just this back and forth in this football that keeps occurring. Well, people may not understand or know this, but it costs the Air Force $12 billion a month every time they do these continuing resolutions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's $144 billion a year. I'd like to spend that. If we're going to spend the money, I'd rather spend the money on the force. I'd rather spend the money on the thing, not the lack of, anyway, I get frustrated, man. That thing frustrates me so bad. So I know it's got to frustrate you guys.
No, it does. And, I think I'm pretty solid ground, being apolitical here to say that, that's not good for our Air Force, the CRs. And, I can't speak exactly to the numbers per se, but obviously what I have learned is the higher up you get, the more you pay attention to money, because it is what drives a lot of what we do. You can't, and I think the continual start, stop, it affects everyone. The shutdowns, the near shutdowns, has a human toll. When we keep coming up to the brink of a shutdown, and I got to talk to our civilians, and I got to tell people, you might not get paid next month. That wears on you after a while. That's at the human level. I see that, but certainly at the programmatic level and trying to run a business, it's no way to do it. And I've heard our senior leaders say that as much. Yeah.
And it just as it turns out, the business you run is defending the United States of America. This is not. I love the businesses I've been a part of, but they weren't that important comparatively. So when these challenges arise in your business, they affect all of our families, and so this is not a small problem that we're talking about. And the 10-year version of us and the 5-year and 10-year version of us, if this continues and if it's perpetual, the outcome seems a little more dire.
Yep.
Because I don't know how you stay competitive in any branch for that matter. And then you're having to choose branch to branch, even just on the defense spending side.
Yep. And obviously you've been up to DC, so you've gotten to see a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, but it's true. And people that are listening, our senior leaders have been saying this for years and years and years to, Congress and others, and it's not just, as you mentioned, it's all branches, all parties and whatnot. But and in the dangerous environment we're in, our force structure isn't as big. We don't have, as you mentioned, some of the technological edges we had 30 years ago after Gulf War. And you pair that with a strategic environment, it's a tough problem to be in. And some of the division we mentioned has real implications. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember one of the events I went to on base was a B course graduation, I believe it was, and there was a speaker there. His son was graduating, I think.
Yep.
Do you remember who it was?
Yes.
I can't remember the fellow's name.
His call sign's Grip. Yep.
Okay.
He was used to be an 06 and flew in the Strike Eagles years ago.
Yeah. Outstanding communicator. Yep. But he was talking about the challenges, peer adversary stuff that's over my head, like words I don't get. But
big words.
Yeah, big words like peer and adversary. And but he said something that stuck with me. He said, our definite advantage doesn't maybe exist the same way it once did, now our advantage is you. And he was talking to the pilots, and I was like, oh, that's strong. And so the people are the separator.
100%. 100%.
Talk about that a second, if you don't mind.
Oh,
Because I think this is a family, this is a family conversation. When you talk about readiness and you talk about mission support, this is not just about the training that happens inside. It is literally about the person.
That's right. And, well, I couldn't agree more. It's why we say, of our priorities, it's, improve combat readiness, support airmen and families, and build leaders. And none of them are, can't do one without the other. You don't support your airmen and their families, your readiness falls out. And you don't build leaders, you can't do any of it, especially in this environment, in the complex, dangerous environment we're in right now. If you think about peer adversaries and I could talk about it if you want, but agile combat employment and trying to be more agile and move around, because we're going to get shot at and we got to be able to still deliver that air power. But it's all a human element. It's all a human dimension. None of the kit means anything without the people working it, buying it, maintaining it, fueling it, thinking about what's 2, 3, 4 steps down, moving it, all of that. And they're very hard things. We ask people to do really hard things. And they're all messy people. They're all humans. So they all have their own, issues. So that's why we got to build leaders that can build that culture. It's all humans. It's all people. You got to focus on, I won't say people first, because in the end, the mission is the mission, but you can't do one without the other. It's the old chicken or egg. And in particular, I especially talk to our NCOs and our enlisted, our NCOs, non-commissioned officers. That has been and is, they are our critical advantage. That is a differentiator. If you look at Russia and why they have failed in a lot of ways, is because they got a lot of conscripts, lieutenants, and colonels, and they don't have people that will see a problem and fix a problem and pull people along with them, and mission type orders. There's a lot we could go into it with it, but all that to say, I agree with you, Scott, completely.
Yeah, well, I wish it dawned on all of us that fact. I mean, because, and I think that leads to what is maybe our final question, which is, as a community, how do we position ourselves to serve the mission and the families better?
Yeah, I may start on that and then maybe hand it off to Meg for some also, I'm sure, final thoughts. But and that is a good transition because thank you for connecting the people side of this to the readiness, to the strategic side, because it does all matter. So quality of life issues, it's not just quality of life, like, just to make you happy, this makes me happy today. We have hard, meaningful challenges that are, first of all, not unique or specific to Goldsboro, Wayne County, North Carolina. They're across most military communities, many, if not most military communities out there. And I know you've heard me talk about them. I mentioned spouse licensure, which it's kind of number 4, but it's childcare, it's housing, and it is schools. And childcare, because it is a different force today than it was years ago. And this isn't something I necessarily need. We've done amazing work in the 4th Fighter Wing over the last 18 months, expanding childcare opportunities off base and on base, and off base, bringing programs in to North Carolina that's actually going to increase the availability of childcare providers, I think, to not just airmen, but to others off base through some certification like processes and things of that sort. But that's a readiness issue. But really, housing and schools are too. And I'll focus on schools in particular right now because spouse licensures being one. Really, the people as they get older, the thing that's going to keep people in or out or want to come to a community or not want to come to a community is going to be the schools. And I say we owe it to our airmen to give them the opportunity for a good education for their kids. And you don't get in the military you don't come in the military for money. We do fine, but you're never going to get rich. And especially those NCOs, the ones I just brought up. Those NCOs, junior officers who are busting their tail, who are deploying, going TDY, all of the exercises you've seen, and often maybe dual military or dual working spouses, now trying to juggle family dynamics and all of the things. If they don't have a place where they know that their kids can have a good opportunity to go to school, they're not going to want to come here, or they're not going to stay in. So schools is a challenge nationwide. And I know in Wayne County, we've talked extensively about this, and there's a lot of goodness we've done. We've opened the school on base, which has been fantastic, but you can't put up a mission accomplished banner on that. There are resource challenges. Our schools are old. I believe in the broken window theory, of that. But we also have teachers. It's hard to keep teachers here. We have busing shortages. So resources is a factor, and that's and there's a lot of different entities at certainly the county, but the state and others that I think need to get after that from a resourcing side. And then there's just the other things that I know and I've talked a lot to the superintendent is working on just to offer a good classroom environment, make sure there's enough counselors, things of that sort. But any effort, any help with improving our schools is important. I think from just how can the community and the government community at large help, that is one. As important, and this gets to all of the people in the community, as important is just building those bonds and those connections with our airmen. Having been here 3 times and having this be our home away from home, what made it special for us is that bond, that connection, that we work together, we play together, we worship together, and just having those connections, and they can be small. And this is where I'll hand it off to Meg too, because I know she is. We talked about it a little bit on the way here. Amazing bonds with the community, but just go out and make some connections.
You stole all my lines.
No, I didn't.
Every single one.
He must know you well.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, Scott, you talked about the last question about what worries you. And I was talking to Luke about, as a mom, it's like, what doesn't worry me? There just seems to be always something. So I don't think I'm unique in that way. But from an Air Force side and living on base, I don't think a day goes by where we don't think of our airmen, the ones living on base, our single airmen that, this is their first assignment, their first time away from home for a lot of them. So I think for us, it's always been about building community from, first assignment, single airmen to the families living on base to the families all around the county that serve in the military. So there can be touch points throughout that can be critical and strategic. We just had our cookie drive, which you all helped me out with.
We got a hall filled with cookies, by the way.
Still.
So
the Chamber of Commerce is a huge partner for us in that. All the local support of that. That's been going on for as long as I've been around. And so, 20 plus years doing that in the local community for our airmen at the holiday season. But I guess my point is those are practical, manageable, but practical ways of helping airmen and serving airmen. And I think a takeaway when we did that recently was one of the airmen saying, man, I was having a really kind of not so great day. And then I arrive at my dorm and there's that gift sitting on the doorstep. And I think I can speak for a lot of spouses and military families that have gone through lots of deployments and a lot of time away from their spouse, whether it's TDY or a deployment, and those little small connection points or touch points that you may not think are a big deal, but to a military spouse who's lonely, to a military kid who hasn't seen a parent in months, to a young airman who's first time away from home, those even just small moments of connection can be a difference maker, not just in their day, but their time serving here. So I want to thank the community for all their support. That's just one instance of many where they've helped serve us as, the active duty are doing their job and doing it well and, getting the job done in a lot of ways. So,
well, it means the world to us what you do, and your entire force and the families that make up your entire force. You're the best we got, and anything we can do, we want to try to do. And I think, I just will speak on behalf of this community. I think they've made that clear over the years, but even today, and I know we've got some challenging times ahead probably, we just want to thank you for your service, and thank you for those long runs and those overcoming those obstacles and tracks and navigating it together, and even being here today and speaking, candidly about those things. I think it's beneficial. And so thank you for your time, and we appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks, Scott. And if I could just say, finally, if I didn't say it before, I try to say it at every opportunity because I mean it. We've been to a number of communities, and despite challenges, schools, there's no easy button with that. There's, we're making progress. But at the human level, there is not a more supportive family or supportive community than Goldsboro, Wayne County, of any in the Air Force. I would put up our folks against any others out there because of those connections, because of that family. And then we know from personal experience, we hear it and see it every day. So thank you, Scott.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.